Okay, so in our first lesson, we did basic grammar. In our second, we did basic vocabulary. Now it's our third Spanish lesson, and we're going to do an introduction to verbs. So if you don't know what verbs are, go back to our first lesson, and at the end, I talk a bit about subject pronouns and verbs. But for those of you who watched the video already, let's go right in. So some important verbs. These are irregular verbs, and they don't follow the conjugations that I'll show you later in this video. These have their own separate conjugations. The first one is ser, which means to be. And here's the conjugation. So first person, singular, is soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. So for example, as we talked about subject pronouns and verbs, the first person singular would be I, or yo in Spanish. So it'll be yo soy. Tú eres. Él, ella, usted es. Nosotros somos. Vosotros sois. Ellos, ellas, ustedes son. So this is the conjugation. How do we use this verb? It's used for description, mainly physical characteristics. For example, you can say ella es muy talentosa, which means she's very talented. Occupation, for example, yo soy un doctor, I'm a doctor. Origin, and for this you use ser plus de. So for example, you can say yo soy de Mexico, which means I'm from Mexico. So you can also do it for identification, and this covers a lot of broad topics like relationships, nationality, religion, political affiliation, etc. An example would be nosotros somos tus primas, which would be we are your cousins. Material, also use ser plus de as similar to origin. So you can say el lápiz es de plástico, which means the pencil is plastic, or basically it's a mechanical pencil. Possession, again, it's ser plus de. You can say el carro es de mío, es de Juan. So that means the car is Juan's. But if you say el carro mío, you can omit the ser plus de. That just means my car. We'll talk about this. This is called a possessive adjective. We'll talk about this in one of the later lessons. But when you're talking about another person and you use ser, you have to add a de. So like I said, el carro es de Juan. You can also use it to depict where an event takes place. Like, for example, el concierto es en mi casa. The concert is in my house. And finally, you can use it for time and day. La fecha es el primero de enero. It's the 1st of January. This is a bit more advanced. You can use it for impersonal expressions. For example, es posible, it's possible. Impersonal expressions just mean that it's not connected to a given person. It's just, it always uses the third person. So es posible or son posibles. Estar. So what about the things that we didn't cover on the previous slides? So like location of a general thing, like I am 3 feet away from you. That's where you would use estar, another form of to be in Spanish. This one's conjugation is estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. Notice that all of them have accents except the first person, estoy and estamos. So it's important to memorize these verbs. And this is used for everything that ser is not. For example, position relative to object. Soy al lado de la mesa. I'm next to the table. Sorry, estoy al lado de la mesa. I'm next to the table. Location, where someone or something is physically located. So, España es en Europa. which means Spain is in Europe. An action, so we'll talk about this later, but if you want to say something like I'm running, you'd say estoy corriendo. I am running. And that's what it means when it's an ing verb. I'm running. And it's also called an action because I'm doing the action right now. Help. Estás enfermo. You are sick. Or a changing condition like estoy triste. I'm sad. You can also use it for a personal opinion. For example, la comida está deliciosa. The food is delicious. With food, like I mentioned in this example, estar means tastes. So the food tastes good or the food tastes delicious. With appearance, it means it looks. So you can say, el carro está limpio, which means the car is clean or the car looks clean. Now, we talked about two important irregular verbs, and those had their own separate conjugations, but regular verbs follow a set of conjugations for each group. So present tense conjugation, that's what we'll be doing in this lesson. We'll go to past, future, etc. in future lessons. So first of all, how do you use the present tense? Some uses are habitual actions like I run every day. Things happening now, like I cook or I read. Things happening in the near future, like I go to the park at 5 o'clock. Or you can also say I'm going to the park at 5 o'clock. And that we'll talk about soon. Timeless events like universal truths, you say something like the sky is blue, you'll use the present tense for that. And hypothetical situations, you'll have to use see, which means if. You might be thinking, well, see means yes. Well, this see doesn't have an accent. Yes in Spanish has an accent. This is how you write yes in Spanish. Notice the accent there. And if in Spanish has no accent, it's just si. So that's the difference between them. For hypothetical situations, you can say something like, if you come over to my house, I will cook food. I would cook dinner or something. You would have to use if first, and then you would use present tense. You can also use it for lapses of time. Basically, all the present tense time things. Present tense is the most simple one. You can use it for ordering, like in a restaurant, like I want to eat rice. You can say that using the present tense. To ask a question, present tense, you reverse the subject and verb. So if earlier it was you are sick, so this is how you write in English. In Spanish, you would write estás enferma. Well, it could be enfermo or enferma, but we'll just use enferma for this example. So if this is the statement, to ask a question, you reverse the subject and verb. So notice that you didn't have to write tú estás enferma, even though tú is the conjugation. So we could have omitted the tú because estás is always for tú. You don't have to write the tú. But in this case, since it's a question, we'll have to reverse it. So you write estás tú enferma. And as we learned in the first lesson, we will have to add the double question marks. Oops. So the question mark in the end and the upside down question mark in the beginning. So this is how you reverse the subject and verb to create a question. To negate a statement, you add no before the verb. So from estás enferma to no estás enferma, you are not sick. And now to actually conjugate the verbs. So remember in the first lesson, we talked about the 3 types of verbs: AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. So AR basically means it ends with AR. Like for example, caminar, which means to walk, and that ends with AR. So to conjugate AR verbs, you replace the AR ending with one of these, depending on the conjugation and the subject pronoun. So if it's yo, you say o. If it's tú, it's as, a, amos, ais, an. So an example would be caminar. So first person would be camino, caminas, camina, caminamos, caminais, caminan. Notice we just took off the AR, which gives us CAMIN, camin, and then you add this respective ending. So it'll be camino and so on. So some important AR verbs that are regular: bailar, which means to dance; bajar; caminar, which means to walk. Notice I'm only giving you the meanings of important ones. The other ones, they're not really used that much, so you can search them up if it comes in a text or if you're reading somewhere. But bailar and caminar, they're extremely important ones, so I'm just giving you some definitions. Cantar means to sing. Cocinar means to cook. Comprar means to buy. Contestar means to answer a question, usually. Descansar, entrar. Escuchar means to hear or to listen. Estudiar means to study. Hablar means to talk. Limpiar means to clean. Llegar means to take, to carry, to wear. It has a bunch of meanings. Mirar means to look. Nadar means to swim. Practicar means to practice. Regresar, trabajar means to work. And viajar means to travel. Now, ER verbs. So they have a conjugation like this: O, S, A, emos, ais, en. So AR verbs had O, as, a, amos, ais, en, an. This basically you're just replacing the A with an E. So for example, correr, which means to run, it'll be corro, corres, corre, corremos, correis, corren. So some important ER verbs: aprender means to understand or to learn. Beber means to drink. Comer means to eat. Comprender means to understand. Correr means to run. Leer means to read. Meter, prender. Romper means to break. Vender means to buy. And now IR verbs. So they're similar to ER verbs, except some conjugations are different, namely the nosotros and vosotros conjugations. This was emos and ais. This is emos and is. Make sure you know the difference between these two. So some important IR verbs: abrir means to open. Compartir means to share. Decidir means to decide. Describir. Discutir means to discuss. Escribir means to write. Recibir means to receive. Subir, sufrir, and vivir means to live. So some more on verbs. There are some verbs with more than one meaning. And for example, deber means to should, ought to, must, or to owe. So it can mean like I should eat dinner, or I ought to eat dinner, I must eat dinner. Or you can also say I owe you. Deber is a regular verb, as are all the other ones on this list. So you can just go back to the conjugations and find out how to actually use the in a sentence. Ganar means to win or to earn, like I win the race or I earn money. Llevar means to carry or to wear. For example, I carry my backpack, or I wear clothes. I wear a t-shirt. Pasar means either to pass, to happen, or to spend time. For example, I pass the ball to you. What's happening? That's an important use of pasar. Que pasa means what's happening. To spend time, like I spend time with my friends, you can use pasar to say that. Tocar means to touch or to play an instrument. To play in general is a different verb, and we'll get to that later. But to touch, for example, I touch the desk. To play, I play the violin. Tomar means to take, to have a drink, or to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So I take the car, I have lemonade, I have lunch, something like that. And then I is an important verb, and it means there is, there are, is there, or are there. It's never before definite articles. So instead of saying I el carro, which means there's the car, you say hay un carro, there's a car. Questions use the same word order. You just have the double question marks instead. So you can say hay un carro or hay un cuadro. Question or statement. No articles for plurals. So instead of saying hay unos carros, you say hay carros. To negate, you add no before I. So no hay un carro. And that's it for today's lesson. One quick thing to note about I, it's actually the conjugation of haber, except it's only the third person singular conjugation. And it's only this conjugation is used because it's an impersonal expression. It's not attributed to any person. So keep that in mind, and I'll see you next time. Bye.